Before we begin, just a quick disclaimer you might encounter strong language. Whoopsie! We also want to be clear that the things we say are our opinions and in should no way be taken as medical, health, or dietary advice. We also are aware that we have certain privileged experiences and therefore we are not able to be representative and we don't even aim to be representative of all the things that people have lived and felt that we have not.
I'm fat and I love salad, green vegetables, and fruit. So,
Show off. I'm fat and I always take the lift when I can, even going downstairs. So,
I'm fat and I love tall men who have ripped bodies. So,
social conditioning is going to get us all. I'm fat and I wear short skirts. So,
I'm fat and I love how slim women look in fitted clothes. So,
I'm fat and I love french fries.
woo!
So,
Welcome to Fat.So, the podcast where we talk about the joys and sorrows of being fat women in India, heavy on the joy. I'm Pallavi.
and I'm Ameya. And in today's episode, we are going to talk about the word fat. It's a word that gets me a little ranty, so brace yourselves. So, fat, right? It's a word. It's a three-letter word like and it's just a word, and yet it's a word that has so much baggage. It's amazing. Let me tell you a little story. One of my nieces, when she was 6, which was like 4 years ago or 3 years ago, I was visiting them and they were zooming up and down the stairs, and I was obviously not zooming up and down the stairs behind them. And then I collapsed on the floor and I was like panting, and she's like, Chitty, why are you so tired all the time? And I was like, because I don't know. And then she says, I know why. So I say, why? And she drops her voice and she whispers, because you're fat. And the shame, she wouldn't even look me in the face when she said that, right? And it just gave me like such a wake up call. Because she was 6 years old. My God, she was like a stick. She's still like a stick. And like here she was already in a place where the word fat was such a horrific insult that she shouldn't say it out loud. She got in trouble with the grown ups. It's like calling somebody stupid. And I just looked at her and I said, yeah, I'm fat, Mahu. And you're short. What's your point? And she kind of like looked at me in shock. And I was like, look, it's just a word. Don't be scared of it. And that's my point. It's just a word like cool or short or pretty or young or rich or poor or bald or whatever else. We've just demonized it so much that it becomes a word you can't even say. And I mean, genuinely speaking, it's an adjective. Look at me. I'm fat. It's okay. It doesn't mean I'm gonna, well, it probably does mean I'm gonna die, but it doesn't actually mean I'm gonna die. And more importantly, you can call me fat and I'm not gonna collapse in a pile of sobbing misery because you called me fat, because it's a fact. It's like the sun rises in the east. It's like sodium, reacts to water in a really explosive way. It's just a thing. We stop making it like this horrible, terrifying, bogeyman person. No, bogeyman. Men are scarier than women. Bogeyman. And that is a huge problem. Okay, end round.
Okay. So, um,
You, Pallavi, tell me, you have. Okay, I have to cut all this on it. So, this is where you have to jump in, agree with me, and say overweight, obese, all of that stuff, right?
yeah. So, as you said,
No, just continue.
I mean, fat, which is actually a word that describes energy storage, is being used as something which is a terrible disease,
Mhm.
right? So it's like a suitcase or a warehouse or a refrigerator. Um, you're not going to you're not going to differentiate them. They're just where you
Storage.
store space, right? But fat has become this word which is used to belittle things, which is used to insult, right? I mean, you even say things like, that's a fat font, or he or she has a fat voice. Yeah? Yes.
Uh, how can you have a fat voice? You can't even see it.
What?
How can you have a fat voice? You can't even see it.
Exactly. But it is used for all of that. And it's really difficult to be in these conversations where there's such a lack of sensitivity to
Yeah.
something which is just describing a state of body,
Yeah.
you know? And maybe it's the same when, thin people who are trying to gain weight use the word thin, but I can't talk about that experience because
Yeah.
I can only talk about the experience of me being fat. And we will talk about this in later episodes as well. But the thing is that something which is, as you said, like like tall and blue, you know, is being used for.
Whose phone is ringing? Amartya. For shame. Someone's phone is ringing. It's not mine. It's not hers. No, it's that. Anyway, never mind. Sorry.
Should we do this again?
No, no, just start your sentence. Okay.
So we will talk about it in later episodes. But the whole point is that the word fat, which is equal to what you said, equal to tall, equal to a color, blue,
Yeah.
right? And that is being used to describe something which is against the norm, right? Because we talk about fat synonymous with overweight.
Yes.
And overweight is where you have a weight and then you have something which is over, which is still a debate that we need to have. Um, and when you are talking about something which is wrong, how are we ever going to be part of any conversation? If we are not supposed to exist because the way we are is something we need to change, there is never going to be a conversation about us. We
Yeah.
are invisible. We are only legit once we get to where society expects us to be. And therefore, there will be no representation ever for us because how do you ask for shoes or clothes or chairs or face masks that suit your size because you're not supposed to be this size in any case?
Yeah, and visibility is such a huge thing because like it's this whole space versus not space. Like I'm big, I take up space, but I try to be small. I try to talk small. I try to have a big personality, so you're looking at my personality instead of my body. And it's completely bizarre because even if you ask for representation, even if you finally get representation, what is this representation? Can I hear about this? What is this representation? Shallow fucking hell.
Yeah.
Oh my god, he it became such an amazing person because he granted this fat ugly woman the joy of his beauty because he couldn't see her as fat. Like, fuck. And I mean, all of this. I'm going to get really ranty again here, guys. Sorry, but all of this pop culture around fat women, right? Vidya Balan, she's beautiful. She's not fat. She's normal size, guys. She's just normal sized. Plus size models. I get so mad when I see any of these regular plus size model things. They're like, oh my god, look at this amazing campaign with plus size models. I'm like, she's a size 12. That's actually not even, you can like get size 12 in Gap. It's not a plus, guys. And there's also, when you look at the real fat women, okay, Melissa McCarthy, Rebel Wilson. I don't even know who to name in Indian movies, probably because they don't exist, but probably also because I don't really watch Indian movies. My bad. But yeah, Melissa McCarthy is amazing. She's such a fabulous actress, but she's always the fat, giggly best friend. She catapulted to fame in Bridesmaids. But what was her role really there? I mean, was it particularly fat affirming? Was it affirming her as a person? I mean, there's that TV show that everyone's obsessed with. This Is Us, right? Everyone, I don't know anybody who has not told me, Ameya, you have to watch it. It talks about the problems of being a fat woman. And I watched it and I'm like, oh my god, basically what you're saying is all of this woman's life is her weight. This is the worst thing. You're basically reaffirming every stereotype. This fat body's on the screen, but this fat body's on the screen as a failed body, as a problematic body, that it is constantly obsessed with not being this fat body. It's constantly jealous of its partner because its partner has a better metabolism. It's ridiculous. And God, I thought it was so offensive because To me, a movie that's actually fat positive is one that's going to give you a space that's more than your fatness. Now, this happens with Rebel Wilson, but she's always weird. Like, there's a whole movie, I think, isn't it romantic? Right?
Yeah, where she gets hit on the head, basically.
Also, I Feel Pretty, where Amy Schumer gets hit on the head, and then she thinks she's really hot, and everybody else is mocking her. And I'm like, how is this affirming in any way? What you're saying is this woman is insane because she no longer sees your social requirements, and that's supposed to be uplifting. How? Like, I mean, the only thing I've seen that was vaguely okay was I think it was called Spy. It had Melissa McCarthy as a CIA desk analyst who used to guide Jude Law through his James Bond adventures. Except he's a total fuck up and she saves his ass all the time. And she ends up going into the field and kicking butt. Like, she just destroys everything and does a fantastic job of the whole thing. And at the end of the movie, he sees her in a new light. She's in love with him, of course. And then he's like, oh, why don't we go to dinner? And she's like, no, thanks. I'm going to be a spy instead. Oh my god, that movie was amazing. Because where have you seen a woman, a fat woman, attain selfhood, professional value, personal self belief, and like wake up and realize that, hey, this man who's been taking me for granted all this time, he should be so lucky. As opposed to, I'm so lucky. And just walk away. It blew my mind.
Yeah, so I'm guilty of watching This Is Us and enjoying it.
Tell me.
Honestly, I agree with you that the representation is not the way I would want it to be, because it's all about how her weight is not allowing her to be a normal person, normal woman living a normal life. But it does talk about a lot of the insecurities that we have, which is a good thing. And that brings me to the point that I'm glad at least there is some conversation around it. When I was growing up and I would come across a femina and it would talk about how Karishma Kapoor gained weight. That woman's waist can be spanned in the palm of my hand. There is no way she can be called fat in any bloody circumstance, you know? Or the whole thing about Rani Mukherjee being a little chubby, or I mean, just such horrible, catty things about these women who are actually absolutely gorgeous. And it would make me want to completely disappear from any room or any sort of place when, you know, you have these people talking about how these absolutely beautiful women who are not in any way fat are being called fat and are being told or are being talked about as they don't deserve to be on screen, you know, because they have gained a kilo.
Jeez.
So, given that space, I'm really glad that we have an Adele, or we have This Is Us, or we have Vidya Balan, or we have Lizzo. And
Lizzo.
you have something to say on that.
No, you go first. You go first.
I mean, for me, Lizzo, it just, again, I don't like her music much, so I haven't heard a lot of it. But I think just the fact that she's out there strutting her stuff, making those videos, and we have that to look at. I mean, I think for me, that's a shift.
That's true. I'll give you Lizzo. I mean, I remember a friend of mine pointed me to her NPR Tiny Desk concert, and she was all like, oh my god, you've listened to this, it's amazing. And I'm like, this music is kind of meh. I mean, it didn't work for me. It works for people who like that kind of music. Obviously, I'm not one of them. And she was also like this really big, loud black woman who was performing big, who was she was also this really big, loud black woman who was performing big, loud black womanness. That, I mean, I'm not black and I'm not a black feminist, but I do read a little bit about this stuff. And you know, a lot of these fat conversations come to us from the West, and it is the black women who really have a lot of this going on, right? So I look at it and I see a certain kind of performative black womanness, which other black friends of mine, women, have told me that, you know, it's really upsetting because you start talking about something and you sort of become shoved into one of these tropes, you know, and that's problematic. And so I was like a little uncomfortable with that as well. But then I went and saw one of her videos and I was like, you know what, I'm sold. Because this woman, she like, bitch, I'm wearing my boy shorts and my push-up bra and I'm twerking my ass in your face. And guess what? all my backup dancers are real plus size women. That was the moment when I was like, okay, I will take this with joy and gratitude. I was so impressed. Like, it was amazing. All these women just dancing around and jumping around and taking up space, owning the space. Like, the camera's gaze is on them. It's not even trying to, soft focuses out. There are no draperies. Oh, don't get me started on draperies. It's just, it was beautiful. So yes, I don't love Lizzo, but I love that she has brought this body into pop culture in this way, and not as an exception. Like, not that I'm Lizzo, so it's okay. But look, all my dancers look like me too. You can't deal with that. Not my problem. And that I thought was beautiful. But let's bring this in a little more personal. What about you? What has been your understanding, your feeling, your experience of the word fat through your life?
So, the thing is that for the longest time, fat was just not the right way to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember I would cringe. I would really just want to run away when I would go out with friends. And it's just so happened that I've always had friends who are slim and skinny and careful about their weight and food and exercise and stuff like that. And yes, they would love me, but then we'd be sitting and having a conversation, and suddenly one of them would say, "Oh, I just need to lose those 2 kilos, or I just need to fit into that size of of jeans." And I would just cringe and want to run away because there was nothing fat about them, and they were calling themselves fat. And if they were fat, then what was I? Did I even deserve to exist? And that still sometimes triggers me, when someone who is not is not well, may think that they are fat, but or may think that they have fat on their body, but are not outliers the way I have become to know myself as an outlier to society's norms, when they talk about their bodies in this way, which is not great. I mean, I still remember the first time I wore a cold shoulder top. And, I'm basically walking with bare shoulders for the first time in my life. And I went straight into this party of people where the conversation was a lot about my needing to lose weight. And I just said, I'm going to make a statement tonight. I'm wearing this. I'm feeling gorgeous. And I'm going to go and do my stuff. And I walked into that party. And believe me, Ameya, not a single person addressed what I had done. It was like I had done this thing and everybody saw it, and not a single person addressed the fact that I was dressed that way. Not a surprise. It was not forget compliments, not even surprise. Except after, working the room for a bit, I stumbled into this conversation where there were 4 women, and one of them looks at me and she says, I like your attitude because I'm just waiting for these 2-3 kilos I have around my waist to go, and then I'm going to be able to wear that dress or something like that. And I looked at her and I said, something, 2-3 kilos is my fluctuation over a couple of weeks. So I honestly cannot even understand
Yeah.
what you are trying to say. And, I look, the jury is out on this whole, is overweight really a thing? Is underweight really a thing? The whole weight stigma part of the fat bit, I think the jury is still out. I think the research isn't completely in over there. But, you look back and you see those goddesses. And they were not goddesses who were pregnant, right? They were goddesses who had big bellies. They were fluffy, they were fat, they had big bellies, they had big thighs, and they were goddesses.
Yeah.
Yeah? So, is there really a norm? Or do all of these sizes exist just because we're different people and we have different bodies and we have different chemical structures and all of that? Then I, you know, so I have this whole rant myself in my
Mm.
mind, where I go into this, do you really deserve to call yourself fat when you're not an outlier? But then I realize that, it's so fucked up, this whole body image. Okay, so let's do it again.
Don't use my stuff.
No, I can't use the word fuck.
No, you can use the word fuck.
Then?
I'm saying don't go into me breaking down about thin women thinking they're fat and how it's okay.
No, I'm not going to say that.
Huh, okay, sorry.
So, what I want to say is that this whole body image, this whole looking at yourself in a particular way and needing to fit into that cookie cutter definition
Yeah.
of 36, 24, 36, that Barbie doll definition, right? Is just so messed up that I know that I may look into the mirror.
What happened? हाँ, we
Yeah,
thought so, but we weren't
sure.
sure. ऐसा ठीक है? Okay. Uh, so when it comes to me and the word fat, I mean, obviously it was the bad word. It was the insult. It was the thing that people called you. Uh, it's one of those things that's out there and you can't avoid people sort of consuming you however they want to consume you, right? I mean, you can look at yourself in the mirror and be perfectly okay with it. But other people look at you and be like, what the fuck? And I mean, the thing is, I feel that it's so deeply ingrained in all of us, all these bad ideas about what is fat, what is not, what looks nice, what looks not, what does not look nice, that you end up looking at people and say, oh my God, what's she wearing? Doesn't she have friends? And I'm like, I do this. I do this because I'm a judgy, bitchy person. And I look at people and I'm like, oh my God, girlfriend, don't you have any friends who let you go out dressed like that? And then one day I realized that, you know, here I am, all 3-digit kilos of me, negotiating this world. And I wear these clothes that fat women don't wear. There is nothing drapey about my clothes ever, right? Okay, maybe skirts can be floppy and flirty, but no, I don't do drapey. And whatever I have is there. It shows. It's supposed to show in my clothes. And I realize that people look at me in shock. They're not looking at me because I'm particularly scandalously dressed, but they're looking at me because this is not how a fat woman dresses. Why are you wearing thin person clothes? And in their heads, it's like this cognitive disjunction. And maybe they're saying, who lets her go out dressed like that? Doesn't she have any friends? So I think that maybe I try to stop myself from having those thoughts now. That I see somebody dressed a certain way and I'm like, you would not wear it, but you are not this person. I can do it with books, I can do it with food, I can do it with TV, I can do it with music. I can definitely do it with the way I look at people in the world. And so the thing that becomes complicated around the word fat then is, I guess, what is complicated about anything, any word. There's an interpretation of it. That's why language itself breaks down. That there's an interpretation of it that I put. When I say fat to you, you have a picture in your head. But when you say fat to me, I have a picture in my head. And there's going to be a difference in the waistlines of those two people. And what happens in that spot, right? But one of the big problems, and you know what you said earlier about everybody has their own metabolism, their own chemistry, their own body chemistry, and the fact that there is this understanding of what is a normal sized body. It's so deeply problematic, and we will, I'm sure, go into this at great depth when we talk about healthcare. But I just want to say right now that this normal, all this normal is white men. All this scientific statistic analysis, I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's all based on a completely skewed sample, which is basically that of white men and maybe white women. And there is so much dietary diversity, metabolic diversity, environmental factors. I mean, even scientifically speaking, nutrition studies, for example, they kind of all fall apart beyond a point because you can't control. So there could be any factor that's at play here. And we just blindly swallow it as normal because society says it's normal because society says. And I really start to think that, you know what? Am I crazy to be this way? Am I a crazy person for thinking that just because I'm fat, I have to hide or I have to be second best or grateful for scraps? Or is it actually the world that's crazy? You know, that's where I end up. And what you were saying again about, women who are not who you and I would call fat, right? There's a lot of stuff that goes around in the body positivity world that, has these things about when you call yourself fat and ugly, and you're thinner than me. How do you think that makes me feel? And I get it because I've been there, right? I've been there when my friend, and I have friends, and I'm like, if you say you're fat, I will physically slap you right now because you're not. But then I started to think about it a little bit more. And, first of all, we're all completely fucked by social training and social norms and all this crap, right? So all of us are told we're ugly by society in some way or the other. Too short, too tall, too big nose, too small nose, curly hair, straight hair. Oh, that's another big one. All of this, right? You're always being told you're ugly. You're always being told that your value only lies in your beauty. If you're an ugly woman, you have no value to society. If you're an old women, same thing, right? No value to society. So what happens then is all of these women are living with the same shit. And when the other thing is, when a woman is talking about herself, she's not comparing herself to you. She's comparing herself to herself. She's comparing herself to the perfect herself she has in her head. She's also comparing herself to herself in college, or herself last year, or herself in her wedding pictures, and or whatever pictures. And it's important to remember that your friends, when they say stuff, are not talking about you. And that's a problem we all fall into, that whenever we hear something, we think it's about us. It's a very natural human trait, right? Um, there's. No, never mind. It's a very natural human trait. And what happens is we interpret it that way and then we get hurt. But most of the time, this person is not talking about you or to you at all, right? And it is important to remember that that same insecurity that you have about how you look is something that she has been fed as well her whole life. And if you can have compassion for yourself, and if you seek compassion for yourself, maybe you owe her that compassion too. There is, however, one huge difference, which is in the physical manifestation of it, right? She will fit into a chair. She will never have to think, oh God, will I be able to sit in that chair? She will never have to think, is it safe for me to step on that board? She will never have to think, will I find clothes in my size in the store? Right? A friend of mine is getting married next year and I'm going to his wedding and I'm super excited. It's in the Dominican Republic.
Woohoo!
And I need a dress. And unless I go to the US before I go to this wedding, I can't buy a dress. So I have to figure this out and find my coax my trailer and do 3 test runs so that I can have a dress to wear to my friend's wedding. Other people will walk into ASOS or The Gap, or if they have a lot of money, Macy's,
Zara.
and buy a dress off the rack. And I don't have that option. So that's a problem that these women will never face. And they will also not get the kind of commentary that we get. So on the one hand, I guess it's important to remember that they're not attacking us, and we get hurt enough. Don't add to your own pain burden by taking this on yourself, right? And if your friend really is saying that to you as a dig, bitch, she ain't your friend, get rid of her. So that's straight up. And to
Rough.
find compassion for them, but also put your hands up and say, hey guys, when you say this kind of stuff, I get it, you feel this way, but also, you don't experience it the way that we do. So maybe think about that. Be aware of the experience that your friends and loved ones have as fat people. And not aware of it as in, well, you're fat, it's your own fault. But aware of it as in, the world doesn't have space for me. Okay. Time for reflections. Do you want to go first?
Sure. I think, as we started, fat is really not a bad word. It's
Yeah.
just a word. And we need to stop, saying to each other, oh, don't say fat, say chubby, or don't say fat, say plus size, or don't say fat, say healthy, or whatever else. Because really, fat is fat. And I'm fat, and that's just the way I am. This whole thing of fat being over or thin being under, I think these are stigmas which we really need to look at. Do we want to continue to buy into them? I love the fact that there is more representation of all kinds of bodies nowadays. You can open a book, you can look at comics, you can look at movies, music, and, there's just more representation, which is fantastic. I see these posts on Instagram saying, I was standing in line and these two girls behind me were talking about how they really shouldn't be eating this burger because, they're on this diet and they are so skinny and I'm not. And how could they be talking about it that way? But the truth is that I may look into the mirror and see my curves and love them. And someone much slimmer may still have this cookie cutter 36, 24, 36 image where she does get bothered by the fact that her size is an inch, that her thighs are an inch more than they should be. And I think that is something to be respected because it's just about the stigma.
Yeah, and that stigma is something that hits us all. And I mean, to me, the thought is fat is a word that is heavily demonized, but it's also only one of many words that are heavily demonized, and that the breadth and the depth of its reach is unbelievable. So I guess the thing to take away is to just, just be kind to yourself because other people are not lining up to do it. And when you can, speak up about it. Um, and remember, I mean, this whole. No, this has to start again. Sorry. Starting again. Fat is just a word and it's very badly demonized, but there are many other words that have it. Dark, for
Mm-hmm.
example. And it's also important to remember that society will always have its own bullshit. And you have to, at some point, find it in yourself if you can. And if you can't, seek help. Please, it's not always easy to do it on your own. Find it in yourself to put your hand up and say, right now, I'm not listening to you. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
You sit there and you say your things, enjoy yourself. I'm reading a book over here. We'll talk when you're done. You got to do that at some point. You have to get into that place. And, it's important to do this also so that you can recognize when people are manipulating you, using you, when you are somebody's dirty secret and they're not actually into you because they think you're an amazing person, right? And also to recognize when somebody is into you because they think you're an amazing person and it's just you yourself who is being all like, no, no, why would he be into me? And all insecure about that. That's it from us this week. You can find us, as I hope you know by now, on this second episode at Fat.So Podcast on Instagram and Facebook. Let us know what you think. Tell us your stories. Tell us your memes. Send us your memes. Um, Give us ideas of what to talk about and all that stuff. We look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening.
Keep listening.